Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines here in Dallas, Texas.
Yeah, and Jackie here from Copenhagen, Denmark.
And excuse me. Today we were discussing this thing, Jackie. Boy, what was it? I think about 6 months ago when we were just having a discussion, and you had mentioned to me. I was mentioning how cool using the alternative HTTP request, which is the XMLHTTP request, which really doesn't have to be XML, so it's really confusing. But that's the name of the object you use to make the call. And during when I was talking to him, or somewhere in there, you mentioned that you had a way to connect to an actual running browser window of IE and send that API call from the browser window. And I remember, because you glossed over it, and I'm like, I'm sorry, can you back up a second? Because that is the most amazing thing I've almost ever heard of. Because when you realize one of the beauties of that XHR request is that XML object, HTTP request object, it leverages the credentials of your IE browser. So if you're let's say if you log into LinkedIn, you don't have to again pass credentials with that object, because it looks into you. And this is where maybe Jackie, I'm not quite clear how it does it, but it will go in and find that you are actually logged in with your browser, and you don't have to pass. It leverages the account. It tells, or maybe I'm mis-explaining it, but it basically tells the LinkedIn server, hey, you're Joe Glines, and when you do this call, it's okay because Joe Glines is logged in and it's coming from him, and so give him the request that it's a valid request, right? And that was what got me really excited. Hopefully that made sense.
Yeah, hopefully. I think I got it at least. And yeah, it is the XML one is using your current cookies, last cookie settings, yeah. And so and as most of these different services, they actually give you a cookie to kind of make it all easier to store some kind of token or open session or whatever they're doing. It makes good sense to use that for doing stuff as if you were you. So you will have the same rights from doing those kind of calls to the server. And as you said with the other one that I've kind of glazed over there, it came about from me backwards engineering some page at some point. And when looking at it, I saw that it was doing these what looked to me like HTTP calls, but no action seemed to be happening visually on page. And I'm like, what's it actually doing? And what it was doing, I think it was JavaScript or something that was actually making a call to the server to receive data. And that data would then be loaded the next time I flipped the page or something. So it was kind of preemptively, or before I took the action, it had already collected what was needed to display it for me. And it was kind of interesting. I wasn't really sure how useful it was at the time, but I tried to redo it, the same thing, and of course took some trial and error. But what I found out was that when using my cookie, I was actually navigating to a URL that didn't really give me stuff that I needed. I needed to be on the page and act as if I was the loaded page.
And to take a step back, sorry for jumping here, Jackie. One is go back. We have webinars both on web scraping and API calls, talking through. We even did, I think, a couple podcasts on the benefits of API calls over web scraping and kind of vice versa. This, by the way, this post I just put up here, which I'll try to put a link in the comments of this video. But this is a discussion on kind of the differences between the XML HTTP request versus the general WinHTTP request. and the pros and cons of each one. And that's what Jackie's alluding to right now, is that, hey, that XML one, you leverages your cookies and leverages some things. The HTTP request on its own, you can track some of these things and you can control them, but it's a little more work. And sometimes it's really painful work. I've had times where it's really, really hard to fake log in and do all this stuff. When finally I'll say, screw it, I'm just gonna, log in with the browser and then get that cookie that Jackie mentioned and then push that into here, and I don't have to worry about it, right? It's just so much easier. But anyway, the thing that really got me excited about it was to realize, like, every browser page that loads, right? When I loaded this page, which actually I'm not sure in the AutoHotkey community, but like, let's say LinkedIn, right? It probably has like 20 to 30 API calls to the LinkedIn and various other, that doesn't even have to be LinkedIn, servers, right? Pinging them and all this different stuff, pulling them back separately. And the fact that Jackie showed me how I can connect to my existing IE browser and then send API requests and hammer whatever server I want. And now, of course, I have to know the parameters I want to pass into it to get the information out. But it allowed me, because that's been my biggest complaint with API calls. You got to deal with the authentication, right? And sometimes that authentication is a bear, and sometimes it's like 30 seconds and you figure it out. It just differs on one. In the example that we're talking about right now, especially, it's when more often than not, the service you're connecting to doesn't have a formal API available. You're not using their API, which walks you through the OAuth, and even then that can be a pain. We are back-ending into their API calls that their web page is using, right? And so this is one of those tricky things when some sources say, well, we don't have an API, sorry. They do have APIs, right? Every browser request is an API call. I mean, trust me, they have APIs. It's just not a public API that you can send and get JSON data, straight away from this and that. But often you can fake it, right? And so anyway, when Jackie showed me this, actually, I won't get into the details on the one that you did help me with a couple of years ago, because it was against their policies. But it was really cool because we were pinging, we was like, oh, I want to look up these 12 businesses instead of having to do all these jumps and hoops with web scraping, and they didn't have it available in their API. We were able to crank through exactly what we wanted because we could submit the different like company, names or URLs and instantly give back what we wanted to.
Yeah, it was kind of like acting like a jQuery or something on the page, where if you had something that loaded dynamically on page without actually having URLs load and images and all, it does have a lot of different aspects. But yeah, it is one of the inner workings of what's happening on a lot of pages today. And as you said, though, you can use the other methods for most things. But yeah, as soon as the authentication becomes weird enough, hard enough, cumbersome enough, this makes it so simple, because you can use normal IE automation if you want to, or you could manually just log into the web page and then have access afterwards to what seems to be almost straight up action to the web page or the server, right? It really is something that I've used quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. And just I tweaked a little bit of what you gave me, because I just wanted it more concise. And so from what you gave me, I collapsed it down to where basically, you get I think it's a pointer to the window, and then you can submit it, and you have you're creating your object here with for XHR, and then you can continue on with your API request with that XHR value, right? Not value, but the variable there. But this is the code. I think this is somewhere on. I don't know if it's actually even on my site. I'll probably. I tried searching for it before we did the call to see. I thought I did a video. I was going to cite the video, but I didn't see anywhere where I had posted it. But I swear I've done a video on it. But I'll make it available somewhere. Or of course you can look at it real quickly. There's not actually, when you get rid of the comments, there's not a lot of code to type. Of course, you wouldn't want to type this out.
No.
But
not necessarily, no.
so this is the whole thing. In reality, it's this first really 2 lines that are really the holy cow that we're discussing, right? The rest of it is just an XML HTTP request. And so there's nothing different really about this. It's this front part where you're connecting to that existing IE window.
Yeah.
And then the reason why I brought this up was I was explaining to Jackie, I was pretty excited because more and more web pages, I go to load them in IE, and IE won't load the page, right? It's just that they're no longer supporting IE. And so I was getting concerned about it. So I was talking to Tank, from the forum, and I'm paying him to write a version of like this for Chrome. And so we'll be able to do the same thing with Chrome, log in with Chrome, and then connect to that Chrome window and send our XML HTTP request to the server.
Okay, so what he's actually doing is, do you know this? I'm just asking, or would you be able to connect to any open Chrome window, or do you need to be running a specific debugged version or something?
I left it mostly. I gave him my requirements, which is pretty much what I just said, and said you figure out however you want to do it. He mentioned at one point he might use Geek Dude's library, and I said I think that's a great idea, or class I should say. I said that'd be a great idea, but I do think you're right. It'll have to be a debug version in order to connect to Chrome. It has to be a Chrome running in debug mode.
Yeah, because that's at least something that I've read and heard about when looking at Geek Dude's library. It seems, and I know that he answered a few times, that is one of the needs, because if you had just run Chrome and wanted to straight up connect to it like you can do with an IE window, there are some security measures that kind of makes that not happen, which is fine. To me, it seems fine. That let's try and protect everybody, but I'm also saddened by it sometimes because it kind of makes it seem as if those abilities are slowly going away and moving into more obscured ways of doing very, very straight up automation.
Yeah. I don't have a way to not contradict that, but to soften that blow you just said, because I think you're right. There's no way to dance around what you just said. It sounds like that's could be very true. The only other thing, getting back to the initial part of having to run it in debug mode versus being able to connect with an existing instance of Chrome, it's all I did was said, well, you know what, I'm going to make my shortcut to Chrome. Just that's going to be every time I launch Chrome, it'll be running in debug mode because I don't care, right? It's on my computer. I'm taking care. Fine, I don't care, right? So that way I can basically connect to any Chrome window I'm doing it because everything I'm doing with Chrome is in debug mode. And so that way I can connect, because it's awesome, right? With IE, I can be doing whatever and go, oh, I want to grab something from a page that's loaded already, right? And that's an awesome capability to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's going away just yet, but it seems as if the stuff that Microsoft did with COM isn't something that everybody else is kind of trying to mirror.
Let's take that a step further, Jackie. Think about the controls and post message and send message, right? There were a lot of different ways that older programs had for connecting to them, right? And COM is obviously another one, right? Which is, of course, we're all talking about Windows things right now. And yeah, it's fewer and fewer have ways to do this, right? So overall, when you look at it like that, you're really right. There's a big pattern of it, but at some point, hopefully, because automation is coming, right? The robotic automation is here. It's going to behoove companies to have that backbone to make it easier and more reliable to automate programs, right? So maybe that'll reverse at some point.
Yeah, I'm like, we could also just be that generation or whatever you're gonna call that had to automate on top of stuff like we are doing, where a lot of people in the AutoHotkey community is doing automation that covers mostly their own tasks. Do you get what I'm saying? They have a task at the computer and they're automating that.
Uh-huh.
Very, very little, I think, a small part of the community has moving on to doing more for that company or separate tasks, or I'm not sure. I have no numbers to support it, but I'm guessing that most people are automating their own day-to-day work, not
Sure.
really trying to get outside of that.
No.
And companies or developers who make Chrome or who make Adobe or whatever, they're not really catering for that use case. They're catering for users who are trying to make nice images in Photoshop, not people who are trying to make automating switching of brushes, right? It's so, yeah.
No, I understand. If anything, I will agree. It seems like more and more we're moving towards more a Mac kind of approach, having one mouse button and having the computer decide the best way to do something. It's not a user being intelligent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. All right, well let's stop it there because we're at a good time and we didn't get too far off topic for a change. Good call, man. All right.
Yeah.
Talk to
Bye.
you soon. Bye.